Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher with Varonis, and today we again have our co-host Michael on. Michael, welcome back, and welcome to your second returned episode.
Yes, it's nice to be back.
Never expected to see you again.
Okay.
In fact, some people are going to owe me some money because of that, actually, so
Oh.
dang. But anyway, it's great that you're back. It's interesting that you're back, and it's going to be an episode on OSINT today, Michael.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
We're going to have to investigate someone. Who are we investigating?
Well,
The Sasquatch?
That's the problem. So this show is sponsored by Varonis, who is a giant business that has lots and lots of customers all over the world, including governments and all sorts of stuff. So when we do OSINT presentations, it is actually surprisingly hard to find a subject that we can cover because unless this is just like an absolute like rogue or criminal, it's very likely that, you know, they might either have a contract or something. So even some like big insurance companies or other places where I would typically just be like, their data's out there in public and they don't seem to mind sharing our data. So like, you know, let's go ahead and profile them. We can't do them. So that kind of limits us a bit. And I've been picking on, as you guys might have picked up over over a couple of presentations, Theranos. Now I for whatever reason, and I have my own theories on this. Theranos seems to be the one target that everybody is cool with doing OSINT presentations on. If you want to go and like pick apart Theranos, you're absolutely fine to do so. I mean, in part because it happened kind of a while ago, but also in part just because it was a huge fraud. And also I kind of feel like sexism is a little bit. But yeah, so like this seems like the one case that's relatively easy to pick up, but all of their infrastructure is ripped out. So it's been such a long time that I can't really show some of the technical stuff that I would if we were doing a more like a technical breakdown of an organization or like a footprint of an organization rather than just trying to look up maybe court documents or filings or other things that we cover also in OSINT. So if anybody is not familiar with OSINT, Michael, how would you describe it?
Open source intelligence. So essentially it's like finding anything that's publicly available. So like you were alluding to, court documents, other government filings are kind of low-hanging fruit. If they have like social media sites or anything else that's like public-facing marketing, that could be good targets for open source intelligence.
Right, and
their website is always a good target.
And the purpose of all of this is to build a picture of the organization that lets you either attack it, understand it, or predict it.
Right.
That's really the goal of all this. Like, there's tons of data out there, lots of information that may or may not be useful, but what OSINT really is answering a question with information that is basically available to the public or can be obtained if you know where to find it. And that's really the trick here, is knowing where to find it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of different types of OSINT investigations before on this show. We've talked about Bitcoin investigations. We've talked about like finding court and filing documents in order to get even like the signature of a CEO, so you can craft like a really great phishing email. In fact, I'm also doing a presentation on how you can use that sort of OSINT to determine like third-party providers who work with what might be a really secure organization who themselves might be really insecure. And because they have that relationship of trust between them, you could use one as an attack against the other. It's a supply chain attack or a watering hole attack. So these sorts of OSINT investigations often rely on documents that are out there in the public that are required in order to do business or operate or register for whatever sort of licenses they need. And that's one big whole bundle of OSINT. But today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do something more technical that we can't usually do in our Theranos example because, again, all their infrastructure is ripped out, so there's not the ability to do like a footprint of like an organization.
Yeah.
There is one other organization out there that is rogue enough for us to be able to cover. Do you guys know what that might be? Let's guess in the comments. So we basically can't cover anybody who's like a real business, even if they've been convicted of fraud or even proven to be like a vessel for money laundering. I've tried to do it before, and I was told like, let's stay away from that. So can't do them. We can't do anything that is like a country that would like do business with us in any way, shape, or form. So that's off the list. And then it also can't be like basically, it needs to be like, if it's going to be like criminal infrastructure, it needs to be active and up right now, which is very tricky because most known criminal infrastructure gets taken down. So that's what's not on the list. Have you put in your guess?
If only there was one country that probably we would never work with.
Well, yeah, and like doesn't obey any rules. So that's North Korea. So today we're going to be doing some OSINT on the infrastructure of the North Korean internet. And we're also going to look up some Bitcoin transactions and take a look at how you could use open source intelligence to learn a little bit about what a country might have been doing with Bitcoin or other financial information that's public data. Now, Bitcoin is a good target for this because due to its nature, which I'm sure Michael can explain if you really want to know, makes all these transactions public. And you can bring these into an investigation to do things like learn how much money a particular operation might have netted a certain group. And of course, like other uses for this might be if there was some malware that was launched that's suspected to be tied maybe to North Korean hackers, and then there's a Bitcoin wallet address that is demanding the money, you might be able to see like how much money was actually sent to that Bitcoin address in order to determine how effective that campaign might have been.
Yeah, and like Bitcoin isn't really one of the privacy-focused cryptocurrencies, so even if they do take steps to like make it cleaner, it ultimately you can kind of track that stuff.
Yeah, but it really does take some visualization. We're not going to do like a full on like tracing of Bitcoin today. We're just going to like take a look at what the transactions look like and just see how complicated and messy the North Korean hackers made these things. They used a variety of different techniques to just make it so frustrating to track this stuff that you basically need to step way back and like full on like monitor where the money goes into each wallet and where that money goes. And there's so much money all being mixed up that it really becomes quite difficult to be able to see the pattern after a certain point. But you can see how much money is initially going into the system. So even if you don't know exactly where it's ending up, you still know like what rough amount of money is being put into an organization. And North Korea really likes cryptocurrency because there's so many sanctions on it. It's a way that they can kind of get around that. So it's kind of an interesting topic with North Korea and Bitcoin addresses and stuff like that. So what we're going to do today is demonstrate a little bit of OSINT footprinting. And what that means is we're going to start with basically no knowledge of the North Korean internet, and we're going to use that as a starting point using Maltego to go in and find many other parts of the North Korean internet and see if we can find common infrastructure, if we can learn a little bit more about like who's running this stuff, and we'll just be using some standard Maltego transforms in order to do that. Now, if you haven't used Maltego before, it is a very powerful OSINT tool that allows you to plug into public data sources or other data sources and extract information from maybe a single clue. And it's intelligent in that it understands what each clue is, and it assigns it what's called an entity type. So that could be anything from an email address, a person's name, a phrase, a website. Like all of these things are baked in, and you will get custom options for how you can follow up on each clue depending on what type of data it is. So in the end, you get a graph with all of this information kind of tied together in ways that make relationships between the pieces of data very obvious. And if you're just doing this on pen and paper or just writing down notes or something using Google search, this is like a whole other level of being able to query and pull in information. Now, a lot of these data sources are from things like search engines. So in some cases, you cannot rely on this data to be 100% valid. Like you need to actually go and track down the source of this information and make sure it is what it's purporting to be before actually accepting it. Because, for example, if we were to do a search for email addresses and just scrape all of Google for @whitehouse.gov email addresses, there are a ton of obscene, disgusting ones that people have made up to like register for websites or like whatever else that don't do email address validation. And open source tools will go in there, they'll scrape that data, and they'll return it to you. And it's up to you as the OSINT investigator to get rid of like, you know, lying jackass at whitehouse.gov. It's like, that's probably a libertarian that registered like on a forum, you know, and not somebody who actually works at the White House. So that's where it takes a little bit of common sense. Like, you know, Michael, do you think someone would go and lie on the internet?
No. Why would someone do that?
Yeah, well,
It's 100% truth on the internet.
unfortunately for people like Michael, the internet is full of lies. And when you're using tools to scrape data, you need to consider the source. If you're scraping data from like a government website that's publishing like PDF documents of companies that are registering with the state, that's a pretty good source. Like, I would trust that source very well. But if you're getting information off of a blog run by someone named Bubba, who's like using WordPress that hasn't been updated since 2005 and like has a lot of opinions about QAnon, like then that might not be a source you want to base any decisions on. Right. Really, the power of OSINT is letting you know where information exists, but you really need to have a good question to answer, an answerable question, and you also need to be able to figure out where exactly the information lives on the internet and whether or not that's a credible source. If you can do that, then the tools I'm going to show you will be super, super useful and very interesting.
So would you caution against like exploratory searches with OSINT? Like, you don't really have an exact question. Like, you're like, I want to investigate a company, but I don't have an exact goal.
So the sad thing about OSINT is if you go in with no question, you will always find what seems like interesting stuff, because it's going to pull in information from sources that like you didn't really think of or consider. You're going to see like information that seems like, like that's inflammatory or interesting, but then like in context, it's actually really not that interesting. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have paranoid schizophrenia who get a hold of OSINT tools, and because their brains are wired to see patterns, and basically they'll see a piece of text in one place and another place, and then they'll like infer a pattern. Like it's very confusing because these tools return so much data, and a lot of it again seems like sensitive, internal, like whatever. That if you're looking for patterns that aren't there, you will find something. So that's one thing that's like kind of strange about OSINT is these tools bring in so much information. You have to have a good question you're trying to answer and be very, very, very careful about which sources you trust. Be very kind of picky about sources and discard most of the ones that you know aren't credible or aren't from a really reliable source. Because if you go in just kind of like searching and just bringing in all this information, you're going to get bad data, you're going to get old data, you're going to get irrelevant data. You're probably going to get poorly matched data. So maybe even companies with a similar name, but like that aren't the same, and maybe there was a misspelling, something like that. So like really, if you come in with a laser focus and you know what question you're like, how much money did this ransomware attack make these threat actors who run these Bitcoin wallets? That's a super answerable question. I can be like $10 million. And then I can write a story about that because I can look at the Bitcoin transactions, query the price of Bitcoin, and be like, oh, that's how much it is. But if I go, how bad was this like ransomware attack? That's totally subjective. How bad for who? Like, and to what scale compared to what?
Yeah, $10,000 for me is a lot. $10,000 for a big company might not be a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're a researcher and you're using these tools, it's really important to first ask yourself, is the question I'm going in with answerable? Like, can I actually get an answer to this, and where would that answer be? If you can define that path, you're going to spend a lot less time like doing exploratory searches, and you'll literally have like one or two searches you'll need to do. The exact right data will be there, and you'll be on to the next question and feel like a badass. Like,
awesome.
That's what I kind of prefer. If you like the game of OSINT is, can you take 5 minutes to instead of doing 30 Google searches, decide which 2 searches will get you the exact right information. If you can do that, you win. Like, it's basically how few searches can you do to get to the one piece of data you need, not like, can you find 25 different search results which sort of answer your question. That sucks. Like, so that's really, when you're an excellent researcher, you would be like, oh, I know that there's an association that keeps track of these metrics, and I know that through their website, I can do a search, and these are the search terms I would need. If you know that, then you might not even need to go through all these additional searches if there's someone who happens to keep track of the exact data that you're looking for. So
awesome.
Yeah. So today, let's go ahead and switch over to my screen. We have the .kp domain. Have you ever heard of this? Have you ever been to a .kp website?
No.
Okay. Well, apparently North Korea attempted to launch this domain multiple times and was shut down by ICANN over and over and over. And then finally, ICANN sent some dudes all the way to North Korea And I guess they like bought them a bunch of food and watches or something. I'm not saying they actually did. I'm just kidding. But like, you know, so some words were exchanged with the North Koreans, and suddenly ICANN was just like, no, it's a good idea. Give them the KP. So now the .kp domain was originally like I guess based in Europe, and then suddenly was moved over to Pyongyang-based Star joint venture. So keep an eye out for Star joint venture, because that's a company that will probably see pop up. So there are second level domains here, but the rules have never been officially published. They're just kind of inferred. You can see that there's a ACA.kp is for academic and research institutions, com.kp is for commercial institutions, edu, law.
Oh wait, there's like an edu.kp?
Yeah.
That's great.
Rep.kp, the propaganda agencies, net.kp, sca.kp. And then these are externally accessible domains.
Oh wait, so
a lot of these are internal only.
So you
gotta
can
be in
only
North Korea.
access them if you are in North Korea.
Yeah. However,
That's crazy.
Yeah, there are other domains that are externally accessible. So you can see one thing that they all have in common is that none of them have SSL. They all are just raw. So just HTTP. Okay. So no HTTPS. They don't seem to care. Or maybe nobody will sell them a certificate. I don't know. But either way. But yeah, you can see some .kp addresses are used for the North Korean internet only. So
a very sketchy place to visit, like in every regard.
Yeah. So I found a really weird address that wasn't officially listed as affiliated with North Korea, but that's going to be our starting point, I think, today, just because I think it's weird. And if you had just come across this address, it was sawa.asia. And there was also a subdomain malicious.sawa.asia. I was like, what? But this was, it's not a .kp address, but if this just popped up and you're like, what's sawa.asia, then that would be a place we could start. But before we do that, let's take a look at a couple of the websites that are accessible. This is a article on some of the official KP websites that you can access from the normal internet. And as you can see, there's actually not that many.
Yeah, it's a pretty short list for an entire country.
My favorite one was just Friend. There's one that's just called
Friend.kp.
Yeah.
If you want to be a friend of North Korea.
Friend appears to be something similar to Yahoo and MSN. Why would you use MSN as an example? I don't even remember what that is. Okay.
Who even uses those search?
Look at this. Friend.kp. So if you want to find yourself a North Korean friend, there's an e-library. I am not going to download anything from here. Hey, I've got 4 messages, you guys. I'm new in North Korea and already people are trying to get in touch with me. I'm so popular.
That's great.
Friend, oh my god, is this a dove? That's beautiful.
Yeah, that looks like a peaceful dove flying around the world.
What if I click the star to something? No. Okay, also 9,000 people visited this website yesterday. Cool. I am one of them. Wow, and even okay, cool. All right, so as you can see, I can visit. Good. I don't know what this is, or what it's trying to get across to me. But here's this picture, and there is
idyllic scene with no one in it.
Yeah, there's no one here. So here's another North Korean website. It's as you can see entirely in Hangul. What a surprise! Although there are some websites that have English as a option, which is slightly surprising. So here's another one. This is the Korean Central News Agency. Let's see what's going on today. Respected Comrade Kim Jong-un sends letter to 10th Congress of Youth League. Wow, beautiful. Okay, so you're seeing kind of a theme here. We got clouds, we've got blue, we've got web design from 2005, and then we have no security on the SSL. So that's basically what you can expect to see with this. So we're going to be using Maltego today. Maltego is a company that has long been a part of the hacker community and included in Kali Linux by default. You can go ahead and create an account and use the community edition. You will be a little bit limited on how many transforms or how many results you can return with transforms, but you'll still be able to do most of the stuff we're doing today. And I'm going to go over to Maltego. And I've done a bunch of these searches. Yeah, I just wanted to tantalize you guys with some of the data we're going to look at today. We've got this data. We've got this data.
These data.
Let me see, what's this one? Oh no, this is Theranos. I've pledged to stop picking on them. Sorry. Okay, so this is the one we're going to try to work towards today. This is a good graph, an excellent graph, and this has lots of different random North Korean domains.
I'm like looking at a spider web of the internet.
Yes, you are. So I'm going to go ahead. Wait, let me just select everything.
You know, ironically.
Oh, like, malicious.sawada.asia. So that's what this is what we're gonna focus on. So let's say that you like had never heard of all these North Korean domains, and let's start a new graph. You'd never heard of these North Korean domains. You just like were doing incident response one day, and all of a sudden you just see this weird domain pop up as like an external thing that some computer's connecting to. So you're just like, what's sawada.asia? That's weird. So you're like, let's track this down. Like, what could this be? Who owns this? Like, what's going on? So if we were to just look at this and like try to just like open this domain, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, you can try it. Let's see, I'll do it in. So if we try to, oops. No, just that one.
You broke the internet.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything. See? It doesn't go anywhere. So that's weird, but it is a domain. It's a valid domain. So what's up with it? So let's go ahead and start looking at this and try to break it down into more information. So if we right mouse click on it, then it'll give us all the different transforms we can do on a domain. And we can also break this into other things if we want to. Like if we want to change this into a website, we can go ahead and try to do that. Now, it looks like there might not be a website being served here, but the domain is registered in there. So, all right. So that didn't really go anywhere, but maybe we could turn this into something using one of the standard transforms with DNS. So, this has to point somewhere, and there needs to be a DNS record referring to this domain. So let's go ahead and see if we can turn this into anything. Ah, there we go. malicious.sawada.asia. Well, that seems horrifying. So that's no good. So now we've taken like, something that's maybe outgoing on one of our systems. We're like, all right, well, this is going to something that literally says malicious. So can we like figure out what IP this is? Like, who is this guy? Like, what is going on? So we're like, let's resolve this to an IP address. And this will tell us what IP address this domain is being hosted at and referred to by the DNS record. Cool. All right, wonderful. So let's go ahead and get the IP owner detail on this. Who is this Sawada?
Oh, wow.
Okay, all right. So we see this is the Asia Pacific Network Information. Oh, God, it's North Korea. So that's not good for us. We can see that it's in the Pontong Gang District. Okay, great. And we can see our friend Star Joint Venture Limited. So at this point, we know that we have stumbled upon a North Korean domain. It is not a .kp domain. So that means that, aside from having their official .kp domain, they also operate this one, which is interesting, I guess. So, well, all right. So we've identified a North Korean IP address. Very interesting. But how do we know this is tied with other North Korean infrastructure? Well, all right, let's go ahead and see if we can find other domains that are using this MXNS. So do you know what that is? An MX record? So that's email.
Oh, okay.
So this is basically going to say, hey, are there any other domains out there that are using this IP address as their MX record? And it looks like no, nobody is.
And you mentioned earlier that a lot of these sites are only accessible from within like that domain that North Korea owns. Is Maltego capable of accessing
Maltego's not in North Korea, and therefore we cannot access it.
Gotcha.
Right. So these are all being done like from my computer. So like Maltego's not like sneaking into North Korea for us. It's just accessing data that they are making publicly accessible. But it's a good question. So let's go ahead and pull DNS records. So what we're going to do then is we're going to try to find out, are there any other DNS servers that are operating basically from this? Oh, shit. Yes, there are. Okay, so now we're into the .kp domain. That's interesting. So we have all of these different DNS records that are clearly based in North Korea, and they are all kind of radiating off of this. So let's go ahead and start we have a lot of data on the screen now, so let's start selecting by type, and we're going to select by DNS name. So now we have all DNS names. And let's see if we can maybe convert to domains. So let's pull out the domains associated with these. And the reason for this is it gives us another data point. So if we want to, we can now select all of the domains, and let's see if any of them are hosted at a different IP address, huh?
Oh, so
See
we're
what
going
I'm
to keep
doing?
branching out
Yeah.
until we find all of them.
That's what I'm hoping for. Might not do it though. So I'm going to go back. Sometimes if I don't know exactly what to do, I'll just run all the transforms on these and see what I can get back. So
When all
I'm
else
just going to run all
fails.
standard transforms, fire.
Fire all cannons.
So this is going to return a massive amount of data, and I might need to prune this a little bit in order to make it kind of neat, but I'm already kind of exploring what's going on, and as you can see, I'm now getting access to North Korean documents that are being hosted on these domains. So if I wanted to read the New Year's address from North Korea, I can now do that. And I'm also getting subdomains. Whoa, I got a lot of them. So what just dropped in and just totally destroyed my chart is I'm also getting historic snapshots. So if I wanted to go back and I wanted to see...
Wayback Machine?
Yeah, from the Wayback Machine, how the North Korean internet has evolved over time, then I could do that. Because I suddenly have a lot of these domains that I can start searching. Oh boy, we're only at 50%, and look at how
wow.
badly abused my graph is. So I'm going to start changing the view. So I'm going to opt for a more organic view, which is going to start grouping things by where they branch off.
Okay.
So we can see, for example, the thing that, whoa, it's still exploding. And I can also omit stuff that I don't want in the next step. So I'm also going to start sorting by diverse descent. And this will allow me to see different things that have a large amount of entities pointing towards them or coming out of them. So what that means is there's basically a lot of things that all these have in common. So these are, like, for example, registration numbers that were used to create these accounts. It looks like, you know, a small amount of phone numbers were used to create a large amount of these domains. And you can also see there's other things, like most of these link to and from a certain website, dpkrportal.kp.
I totally read that as Dark Portal.
Yeah, it's not though. So, all right, so this is an absolute ton of data, but it gives us a really good breakdown of each of these domains. We can see subdomains, so I believe, let's see what this is. Okay. Yeah, so this is a domain, which is just cut.ch. So that's a Chinese domain that it looks like is linked to directly from this North Korean domain. So some of this information now, because I ran absolutely every transform that was possible, I did that thing I told you not to do. I basically was just like, hey, show me everything, because I don't know what search to run. And in exchange, it gave me absolutely every piece of information about the North Korean internet that was available on those domains I selected. So is that a good thing? Well, I can tell you a whole lot about any one of these particular domains. Like, let's pick one. Let's go ahead and say tourismdpak.gov or whatever. So the North Korean government tourism website. So I can see a JPEG that's hosted on it. I can see the email address that's been extracted from that, which is actually great. I love that it did email addresses. I can see the name server right here, which is hosting the website. So I can see a bit about the infrastructure, but frankly, like, this is too much data. Like, I don't want to do analysis on this level. So if I go back, I can start pruning data out of this by just Command Z, which is, you know, a little bit not elegant, but it works.
Yeah, that's what I was starting to say earlier, is it's kind of ironic that Maltego, in my mind, is great for helping visualize data like this, but sometimes it can go a little overkill, and then you really need to prune it back to even be able to see what you're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. And there's other ways of doing this too. So it looks like, oh wow, I can't go back any further. That's funny. I'm just gonna go, well, what's easy about this is we can replicate what we did very quickly. So if I just, again, domain, Sawada, and then DNS. So on this, let's go ahead and see how many IP addresses we can get. So in, again, a beeline to find related IP addresses, we can DNS from IP. All right, we've got a bunch more DNS. So we can go ahead and resolve to IPs again. Most of them will probably point back here. Oh, but not all of them did. So when we resolved to IP addresses, we found that a couple of these actually had additional IP addresses involved. So then we can do this, and then again do DNS from IP. Look at that. We dropped even more DNS. So you can see that there's just a kind of a pattern of enrichment here that happens. So, and I can now just also, if I want to, just select by DNS records and just run the same search again.
Yeah, I wonder how deep it goes.
Okay, so we've now found 3 different IP addresses. And also, if we want to, let's try and go ahead and convert these to domains. We might be able to find a couple of these domains may be resolved to different ones. So let's select by domains. So there's also a really interesting transform. Where is it? You might not be able to. Okay, cool. Yeah, you can use Bing to like resolve. How do I put it? Resolve other websites on the same IP address. I might have to find exactly where they are, but what I'm doing here is basically, if I hit a brick wall, I can convert one entity into another and just see if there's other transforms that might apply to it.
And are these paid transforms, or is this
Nope,
all
these are all free.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so standard, and I haven't even used, so if you get like a Shodan account, you can also plug Shodan into this.
Yeah, and I imagine the results are pretty tiny because of our particular target of this investigation.
The results are not tiny.
Oh.
There's a lot. In general, what you'll find is like you will be overwhelmed with data if your subject is huge. There's just not a lot of North Korean domains that are really out there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we already have a good amount of foundational domains. We can see we've taken one initial domain and got, actually, how many do we have? So we'll select by type and grab domains. And you can see we have, oh yeah, this many, however many that many is. Oh, 21. So we've found 21 North Korean domains from just one. But what I really want to try to do is find email addresses. So let's see if any of them use PGP. That would be hilarious. They don't, though. Okay, all of North Korea hates PGP. Well, I can't say that's too surprising.
Really funny if like they were HTTP websites, but they were using PGP encryption for their emails.
Yes. Okay, so I just dropped the email addresses that are listed on the Whois data. It's probably not going to be anything too interesting, but then we can also use search engines to find the any at that domain email addresses. Looks like there weren't any, so I'll run this one. Okay, so we can also, let's maybe try, we're doing domains, so DNS name, well, okay. So if we have a couple email addresses, let's see, we have 2. That doesn't really seem like enough, right? So let me try DNS names. Maybe we can try, there's no transforms for email there. Again, at this point, I just want to try out the different types of transforms that I have and see if there's anything I can find. Let's run all of them.
No, earlier we had also talked about the cryptocurrency transforms. How do we get to a cryptocurrency like wallet or address?
Not through here. We would need to look it up from the outside, which we'll get to in a minute. But first what I want to do is I want to try to take a couple North Korean email addresses. I guess we'll just take these 2 as an example. No. And one thing you can do is just run them through Have I Been Pwned?
Oh, of course. See if there are any breaches.
And it looks like this one immediately is. Oh yeah, and they're also listed in multiple pastebin drops. So that's fun. So not only is there some leaked data about this, but yes, both of these have been involved in different leaks. Now, I want to go ahead and maybe select by domains, and I'm just going to try throwing a bunch of standard transforms at it. And what I want to do that for is I want to see if I can dredge up any other emails that I can just mass pass into this. But if I really wanted to be more precise about this, I could go to here, and I could just put in whatever domains I want into the harvester.
Okay.
Which will go through and try to find any email addresses. Of course, it didn't really find any on this one, but this would be my best bet for going through and attempting to find anything that involves this domain. So,
and I believe we have a previous live stream on the harvester.
Probably. Yeah, it's a great component. So this is going to go and run and do some stuff. And while that is doing its thing, I'm going to bring in the second component, which, as Michael very helpfully mentioned, is cryptocurrency. So North Korea cannot list any cryptocurrency addresses like on their websites because they will immediately be sanctioned or taken down by the US government. It's just like not smart. But they do a variety of hacking campaigns which bring money into these cryptocurrency wallets. So basically what you would need to do to identify this is first find maybe like an example of some ransomware or something else that is pointing towards a particular wallet for payment. And once you have that wallet address, you can start examining the transactions going in and out of it. And that should allow you, I'm going to change this view. That should allow you to see like if there's something interesting about it, whether there's a large amount of money coming in and out of it, whether it's being like tumbled or like anonymized by the payments going into a bunch of other wallets, like purposely breaking them into small pieces and shuffling them around. Like this is all stuff that criminals will typically do in order to make it more difficult to just watch like a linear chain of where the money goes after an attack. So in that case, it would be very useful to take a look at some source addresses and figure out how much money is going through them and where the money is going and whether it's going to be an easy or difficult job of tracing it. So in my example over here, I have a couple Bitcoin addresses that have been called out by the US Department of Justice as being used by North Korean hackers to basically facilitate transactions from hacking attacks of various types. So these are all addresses we can use as entry points in order to just take a look at how much money was actually being passed through here and what the transactions look like. So let me go back to Maltego. Yes, dismiss all. And I think it's finally done. Okay, so as we can see, I've told it to just pull in as much data as possible because I want to see if it can automatically grab some email addresses. So I'm going to select all. Actually, no, I'll select by type, email address. And what have I got now? Now I've got 27 email addresses, Michael.
Hey.
So our standard transforms were able to go through and pull more data than we were able to do before. So now if I right mouse click and select have I been pwned, I should be able to identify North Korean email addresses that have been involved in more data breaches than just those two. So this will run for a little bit, but once it's done, I should have a pretty concise list of what types of breaches North Koreans are involved in. And when I ran this the first time, I was kind of interested to see that like it was like Adobe and like other like normal like tools and some other different just like services that like kind of the normal people use. But these again were registered with like official North Korean email accounts. So that is interesting.
That is kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah, a lot of these are also, it looks like just looking at them, are from, well, with the exception of this rogue Namecheap, are from, you know, like the official records of the email address. So, you know, that just means that this is pulling it directly from the registration on those websites. So, all right, so getting into the cryptocurrency stuff, let's take a look at this, which is basically the record of transaction of one of the Bitcoin wallets. So let me start a new graph, and I'm going to drop in an entity that's a Bitcoin address, and I'm going to paste in. No, that's.
I don't know why this thought just occurs to me, but if say there's a certain ransomware, couldn't you, in theory, use the wallet address that they list on like the ransomware to discover who else has been targeted by that ransomware?
Bro, that's what I just said.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Maybe that's why it just occurred to me because
it's like somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah. No. Like
yeah.
that. Like so. this was all basically, I think, discovered because that's exactly what was happening.
Right.
North Korean affiliated ransomware was referring to these Bitcoin wallets.
Okay.
So they specifically singled them out as being used in facilitating these transactions. And you can see this other graph is still going crazy. But if I right mouse click on this, and you can see there's blockchain.info. This is a series of transforms that can give me information. So I can look up details. I think I have to wait until this other one finishes, but it's 98%. Update the graph. All right. So this dropped me a Bitcoin address. This is a...
And do these entities tell you like what kind of quantity of Bitcoin's being transacted?
Well, let's see. So this is 2 details. All right. 2 inbound transactions. Okay. 2 outbound transactions. Okay, and 2 source address. Okay, let's pick another one.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick this one. Yeah, this one just doesn't seem to have anything associated with it whatsoever.
It also occurs to me that someone could like make a script with these wallets or a group of wallets that just like trades very small amounts of random Bitcoin around each other just as a way to obfuscate real transactions.
Okay, so this one's at least returning something. So if we go to destination addresses, we can see that we have transactions going to these. Let me just go ahead and run all of them and see what I can pull up on this. All right, finally some information about each transaction detail. So we can see, what is this? This is a Bitcoin transaction. We can see that it's going into this account. We can see this is a Bitcoin transaction of 10.7 Bitcoins.
That's a little bit of money there.
How much is that?
Let me get my calculator out. Let's just assuming today's value of Bitcoin. And you said 10. That would be like 550,000 or so.
Okay, so we can see 10 Bitcoins went in and 10 Bitcoins then went out, and it went out to right here. So let's see if we can enrich this. So what happened after to this? Okay, so our 10 Bitcoins then went into here and proceeded to go out to other places, but we can see it was broken up. So only, 52 Bitcoins actually went out to this address right here.
That's like 2.8 million.
Okay. So let's follow this one. Boop. All right. So now we have from this address, we have everything seems to be getting split up.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering is what approach they take here.
Yeah. Well, basically, they're going to mix it up with a bunch of other people's Bitcoin. They're going to tumble it, and then they're going to move it around. So you can see this one has a bunch of kind of like random transactions coming out of it. A lot of them quite small. All going to different addresses. So we can kind of start seeing like what initially happened here is like we have, a feeder of, 10.7. And then let's say that we want to be like, all right, well, where did that other like 50 or 40 come from? So let's see. Down to here, 52. Oh my gosh, this graph is already getting kind of stretched out.
Yeah, that really is the problem with Bitcoin if you're trying to be anonymous, is like anyone can go in and do this.
Yeah.
And all it takes is, that one mess up where you get associated with a wallet and then everyone could see, hey, so-and-so's traded 2.8 million in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a lot. 52 is a lot.
I mean, well, I think another interesting data point that you would want to look at is like at the time, right? Like, because 2 years ago, that would certainly been a lot less amount of money.
All right, so I ran all the I basically dumped the data from all the intermediary transactions, and it's getting crazy. Let's see if we can...
Whoa, that's a cool looking one.
Yeah, right? So on this one, we can see...
I feel like I'm entering a planetary orbit here.
Yeah, we can basically see the relationship between the different transactions and how they like radiate out to other transactions. But this is basically getting to like the limit of Maltego's ability to like make this coherent.
Mm-hmm.
And also we can also sort by different entities that have a lot of transactions going in and out.
Does Maltego have a way to start like filtering the data?
Yes. So if we want to make it so we can change the view, then we can go through and we can decide like how many are going to show up before they're like grouped into like smaller entities. Like you can see the number of results. If we want to like, we can set it lower or higher to group results if they're all the same.
Number of results to 10K.
Oh yeah, well also that. But yeah, so we can control like how things are visualized if there's like a lot of results. So here we can see a lot of activity in and out of this address, and if I double click on it, it should have some entity properties. It doesn't look like it has updated the total received, total sent, or total throughput. This used to work, and it kind of makes me sad that it doesn't, but we can go ahead and also just look this up. Because now we have the additional addresses for us to track down like what this was doing. So this is, again, just one random address that was called out by the Treasury Department. I was using a totally different one as our early example, but we can see the relative amount of activity going in and out of it, again, by just dropping it in and then running. Oh, actually, another thing that's crazy, I forgot about this. So I'm going to run blockchain.info. Tell me about this address. Okay, it's got 8.999 going out of it. That's interesting. Still not telling me in the entity properties any details, but that's okay. I forgive it.
I mean, these aren't trivial amounts of money.
Right, but then if I take this, let's say that I want to know where this has been on the internet. So if I take this and make it as a phrase instead, and then through standard transforms do a search, then I should be able to websites using search engine and try to use some of these website searches to find places where this address might have shown up before. Let me try all transforms. Go.
Oh no, this worked so well last time we did it.
Yeah, sometimes it'll return way too much. So in this case, I'm not seeing many places where this does turn up, but it will allow you to, if you just change this up and use it as a different type of entity, look and see if this is.
It's interesting that it's not even returning the Treasury website that you got that address from.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that interesting. Like it's just depending on where it's pulling it from, and if this is looking in like headers and stuff like that, then it might.
I mean, you could always try like Google dorking it.
Yeah.
As well.
You definitely could. And then of course you can also try to run this through like Aleph and other data sources if you wanted to see like if it had appeared somewhere, like if it was in an official Treasury document. Oh, and look at that. We see it's actually attached to a complaint. So
okay.
Another data source, Aleph, was able to point us towards a document that references this. I can click on Open All URLs. And it's probably going to try to get me to download the original document, which I will not do. Oh yeah, it's pointing me to Document Cloud. I'm going to...
Now, does Maltego natively support Google dorking, or would you have to like...
I'm sorry, what?
Does Maltego natively support Google dorking, or if you wanted to find other information that way, would you have to import it?
Are you asking if there's like a Google Dork transform?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I mean, if you wanted to do with Google Dork, you would just type it in as a phrase, like
Gotcha.
exactly how you wanted to search it, and then you could do it that way. Come on, Aleph. So usually, I have so many script blocking things, but usually what this will do is it'll allow you to see the result from Aleph directly without freaking downloading it, which I'm not doing, Aleph. You're insane. But here, if I wanted to follow up with the results, we can see this is where it is.
For people
why
that
wouldn't you just tell me?
may not be familiar, what is Aleph?
Aleph is a database that is for journalists and contributed to by journalists that has lots of court documents, lots of like data breaches, lots of like other things like the Panama Papers, all kind of integrated.
And is it free and freely available?
Yes.
Or, okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So here we can see that this is actually a court document that refers to this cryptocurrency address. So if we were to go through here, we can see blah, 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 that there's going to be a list of these addresses that were Is that Maltego? No. Maybe
And
it
that
is.
looks very Maltego-y,
Sorry,
though.
it very much looks like Maltego. But basically, they did like the same thing that we did, but like with a lot more accuracy and precision, and went through and found which Bitcoin addresses were mostly associated with this. So then in Maltego, we were, oh wow, that's a lot, $234 million. Wait, is that million? No. Yes, it is. That's a period at the end.
Yes.
So that's very interesting. And what was cool about that is we were able to find this document in Maltego by just taking the Bitcoin address wallet, and turning it into a phrase, and then running it through a different data source. So, okay, that's all I got for today. There's way more that we could do, but basically we were able to take a single domain that is hosted by North Korea, but not, like, as far as I'm concerned, like, officially affiliated with them. We were able to determine it was a North Korean domain, find lots of other North Korean domains, and then discover a bunch of North Korean email addresses, and if we wanted to, we could then look to see if they were involved in data breaches, and we found a couple of them were. Now, I forgot. So, the best part that I was gonna show you, that I guess I can still do, let's go back to my screen. The best part is really looking for vulnerabilities. So in a lot of this, let's say, we'll go back to this graph that I had a bunch of stuff all kind of pulled out.
The rat's nest.
Yeah, the rat's nest. So we can see like all these different addresses and stuff. There are CVEs. So how did I get these? Well, I was able to get these because Shodan has already indexed all of these domains, and I can query them. So what I did in order to get that was I selected all of the... Oh, that's what I did. I selected all the IP addresses, and then Shodan will have scanned the IP addresses and noted if there were any services running that are actually vulnerable. I forgot that it wasn't the domains. I was supposed to use the IP addresses. But anyway, so if I want to basically identify, in our original graph, we had like a handful of IP addresses that were all involved in the North Korean internet. I think we had, get out of the way. I think we had by type... IPv4 addresses, we had all of like 3. So that's not a lot. So if we select, let's invert selection, and then let's just delete everything. Can we do that? Yes. Cool. Look, we're left with 3 floating dots. Sad, lonely dots. So we got 3 North Korean IP addresses. Well, if I right mouse click on Shodan and I go to vulnerability details, run my API key, which I now have to change, and look at that. So we're instantly able to detect various severity vulnerabilities on these North Korean domains. We can see right here what the CVE is, and if I just click on Google Me, it'll lead me to what this particular vulnerability is and how it can be exploited. Use after free vulnerability in blah, 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 blah. Cool. And this is like a relatively severe vulnerability. We can see the actual, in the properties, we can see it's a 7.5 out of 10, which gives it this like red advisory. So this is also a great thing to run on perhaps your own IP address if you wanted to see if Shodan has already noticed things vulnerable about it. But here we've gone from knowing like one domain that seemed weird all the way to knowing several North Korean domains and IP addresses, some of which have actually current vulnerabilities on them. But hey, we're not going to get in trouble for showing it because, they don't care about us.
Just to clarify, is that saying that it's currently vulnerable to that CVE, or
yes.
that... Okay. Wow.
It is currently vulnerable.
That's, okay.
It's just a 7.5 out of 10. It's not bad.
I'm sure nothing could go wrong.
Yeah. So, okay, I think that's it. But this has just been kind of a blended approach to looking at the infrastructure of an organization that, is using their own stuff. If you are running some of these techniques on an organization that's using like shared hosting, for example, these results will be a lot more confusing. This is sometimes the case with like smaller businesses. So if you like run a search, find the IP address, and then suddenly it's a bunch of just random domains from like other established medium and small businesses, it's a pretty good chance that like they're using like Bluehost or something, or like some shared hosting provider that means that they're going to be kind of co-located with a bunch of other people. So some organizations will have their own infrastructure, some organizations will not, but it's always interesting to see which ones are running on their own stuff because it makes it super easy to discover everything that's running and just very quickly scan it for vulnerabilities. So yeah, that was a pretty easy example. Again, Maltego, the community version is free. You can check it out. If this sort of investigation appeals to you, then my only plea is just when you're going into it, make sure you have a question you're trying to answer. Otherwise, you're just going to see a bunch of data, and it's going to look like a bunch of weird graphs.
Yeah, you're gonna have lots of rat's nest appear on your screen.
Yeah, I mean, you can make them look really pretty, and in fact, like some of the different graphs I've done that are like beautiful but like barely coherent were actually used by Maltego to make one of their shirts that they gave me.
Oh, that's pretty.
So yeah, it's not this one though.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, so that's all we have for today. I guess we'll see you guys next time. Bye.